In the various discussions I've been involved with about defining atheism as a lack of belief, I've sort of taken the psychological origin of it for granted.
That's right, it's this guy again, hopefully for the last time. But his premises in this video are so very, very horrible that, as per usual, he's completely missed the mark and I'm compelled to respond. Psychological origin? If a need for accuracy in a technical discussion about religion can be called a psychological origin, okay, fine, but that's really not where he's going to go with this, as I'm sure you've already figured out. Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers, BionicDance here. Our old pal Missing the Mark is back, and he's bending over backward to make his preferred definition of atheism seem somehow more rational, at which he's going to fail miserably. He makes quite a few horrible assumptions right at the beginning, which is why I only made it 3.5 minutes through his 13-minute video. If everything he said after that used those misconceptions as the basis of his position, there was really no point continuing.
Defining atheism as a lack of belief in God does answer a psychological need, which many people who self-identify as atheists have.
No, a psychological need you say we have. Telling us how we feel? That's a paddlin'. We tell you our mental emotional position on things, thank you very much indeed.
For the benefit of any atheists who are listening, I will note that the word many does not mean the same thing as the word all.
Many, all, it doesn't matter. You still don't understand the point of the position and don't get to assign it to us.
For clarity within this video, I will refer to this subset of atheists as lackers.
The funny part here is that it's for the sake of clarity that defining atheism as a lack of belief in gods exists, and yet somehow he manages to miss this entirely. I suspect, and I say suspect because unlike him I'm not prepared to make the assumption, I'm only speculating. I suspect that the reason for his oversight is because allowing this definition of atheism to be part of the conversation makes it more difficult for him to dismiss atheism and the reasons for it. That's certainly the impression given, if not by him, then by many on his side of the debate.
I think the best way of seeing what psychological need this definition fulfills is to look at the etymology the lackers always cite. It is, so they will tell us, formed by taking the prefix a to denote negation and attaching it to the word theism. Thus they are not theists. But this begs for the question, what does the word theist mean?
Belief in the existence of a god or gods. And yeah, it says opposed to atheism, which theists so often interpret as complete rejection. But one possible opposite of belief is its absence, not only denial, which can be a reason for belief's absence, but not the only possible reason. Again, this is why the impression given by those insisting on atheism being rejection or denial is because it makes arguing against atheism a lot easier. Oh, you say that God doesn't exist? Well, now you have to prove it. It's burden of proof shifting to take the heat off of the God botherers. I've seen it so many times before. And it doesn't allow for atheists who say that the theists haven't proved their case for God's existence, and that's why they don't believe. Even if the theists are willing to acknowledge the existence of such people, for some reason they seem to insist that they're in a different category entirely, rather than being a subset of a larger category of atheism. Having a larger category that contains subsets which can be described using adjectives is for the sake of clarity. Why Missing the Mark and many of his fellow faith heads don't see this, even if they don't agree with it, is quite thoroughly bogglesome.
I think they'll generally say it denotes a belief in God or gods. But right there we run into a problem. Those two things are utterly unlike each other. A necessary, uncreated creator who made all that is, and a big guy with a hammer who can throw thunderbolts, have nothing in common. The only positive quality we can all agree that they both have is that at least a few people believe that they exist.
The different traits of the deity in which belief is being held is irrelevant. Much like with atheism, God or deity is a very broad category which contains gods of monotheistic religions as well as pantheons, at least one supernatural being considered divine and or sacred. That's all that's necessary to be a god, just as having no belief in any is all that's necessary to be an atheist. If you want to separate, say, Jehovah from Thor or Ra, now we're back to having subsets that can be separated using adjectives or names, but still contained under the larger umbrella category of deities. This need for one word to carry all of the burden for each subset and ignoring the larger category is, again, quite bogglesome. If the goal is clarity in conversation, then this separation rather than categorization seems counterproductive.
And what about titans? What about nymphs or cyclopses? Giants? Trolls?
If they're supernatural beings that someone considers divine, I suppose we'd have to accept them as at least potentially being gods. But it's the being considered sacred part that's necessary. And let's not discount the fact that somebody could consider something to be of divine origin and be completely wrong about it. Could possibly throw a monkey wrench into the whole actually being a god thing. That's probably why so many religions seem to be quite grumpy with each other. They disagree on whose imaginary friend is the divine one, and which is just people blaspheming their way through life.
What these things actually have in common is that materialists don't believe in them. I've got a feeling I need to pause at this point and explain what a materialist is. Unfortunately, materialism is not easy to precisely define, for reasons which I'll go into later, but loosely it's the belief that only matter, energy, and physical forces exist.
And this is where he's gone completely off the rails. It was hearing him say this that inspired me to make this video instead of ignoring him completely.
So to get back to the unfortunate term theism, its real definition as the lackers use it is, basically, the belief in anything other than what a materialist believes in. This is where the practical problem with defining atheism as atheism comes from, because if you substitute the definition of theism, an atheist is someone who is not a materialist.
Every last scrap of that is wrong, because this may come as a shock, but an atheist doesn't have to be a materialist, because gods are not the only form of the supernatural that has been proposed.
Do you believe in UFOs, astral projections, mental telepathy, ESP, clairvoyance, spirit photography, telekinetic movement, full trance mediums, the Loch Ness Monster, and the theory of Atlantis?
If there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe anything you say.
No God required. If I believe that I can cast lightning bolts from my fingertips in complete defiance of natural law, just how much of a materialist do you think I would be? And yet, the number of gods I believe in would still be zero. I'd still be an atheist because I, wait for it, lack a belief in any gods. I am still distinct from theists who do believe in gods. Mind you, pretty much the only part of that Ghostbusters clip that I come even close to believing in is UFOs, and the jury is still pretty darned out on that one. I'll freely admit I'm engaging in some hardcore wishful thinking when I entertain the notion, 'cause, space, aliens, that shit's cool. But I'm a sample of one. I bet you'll find more than a few atheists who are totally into that Shirley MacLaine stuff, just they don't believe in gods. And if the rest of his argument is rooted in strawmanning the lack of belief definition of atheism as materialism, when materialism is at most a subset of atheism, then there's no point in continuing this discussion. Furthermore, a problem with his argument is that it goes in the wrong direction. Theists are supernaturalists rather than not materialists. But then theists are only a subset of supernaturalists, just as people who believe in psychics are a subset. Again, he doesn't seem to understand the categorization and how it aids clarity in discussion rather than hurts it. It's like taxonomy in biology, starting broad and then narrowing down. How can that do anything but allow for clarity in both understanding someone's position and describing your own? Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please, think.